Test, test, test.
Progress.
Hello, Mayor Polina. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
All right, crystal clear. I'll be right back. I'm going to take care of a couple technical issues here. See that Brent has been in and out a couple of times here, so I may give him a call real quick to see if he's having some troubles.
Hi, Brent.
Hey, everyone.
Hi, Brent.
Counselor Smith is coming on in here.
Looks like we're just waiting for our teacher.
Yeah.
You have better lighting tonight, Carrie.
It's 1,000 miles difference.
Oh, now you're backlit in the shadows.
Glasses stand out though.
Yeah.
Pretty cool looking, really.
They are my eyes, that's for sure.
You look like a robot with laser eyes.
Good, I got something to laugh about today.
Gonna go ahead and pause here for just a second, see if I can get a hold of Peter, see if he's having any troubles.
In the meantime, good evening, everybody.
Good
Good
evening.
What are you reading, Rita?
I'm embarrassed to say, but it's a Stephen King book my daughter has asked me to read. The Stand. But it's over 1,000 pages, so it's slow going.
Wow.
Mm.
But it's really good. It's really, really good. So it's good. It's a treatise on modern times.
Ah, sounds like a scanner.
Oh, I better turn that down. I'm sorry. I always like to be in the know, but sometimes it's not.
Oh, that was you.
That was me.
Wow. I figured it was Chad getting a call to go make a run somewhere.
No, it was me. But it's off now.
And it looks like we have Peter.
There he is.
I am here. Sorry, I have it set up so that it goes straight to the meetings page, and it it wasn't on the meetings page. It was on the regular web page, but I managed to find it.
Yeah, I had a hard time also.
All right, well, 5 minutes, I guess, is in the range.
Not too bad. The teacher can be as late as they want.
All right, well, let's get started because we're getting a little bit later to start. And the first question is election law. We're about to have one. And there are times on the calendar where special rules will go into place. And there are also things that elected people can do, but appointed staff and volunteers cannot. So we're going to walk through those so that everybody can understand exactly what rules apply and when. And this specific statute we're talking about is the Oregon Revised Statute 260.432. And so what that says is there's a certain time when a ballot title is referred to the county in our in our instance, because that's who we refer it to. And at that point, what happens are neutrality rules. So at that time, any message from the city needs to be content neutral. So you'll see a sign that says vote. That's content neutral because it doesn't tell people how to vote. It just suggests that they vote. If you were to say vote against Measure X, that would be advocacy, and that's not the sort of message that the city itself could put out once we have turned in our ballot title to the county. Right now, we don't have to worry about neutrality or these rules being in place because we have no ballot title that's been sent to the county. I suspect that will happen in February, and that's when we need to be really careful. The key is that we can put out facts, but they can't be things that are designed to get people to vote one way or the other. It needs to just be clear and objective facts that state exactly what we're doing. That's the same thing we did with our ballot title the last time that we attempted to get it on, that was reviewed by Judge Peterson, and he determined that that ballot title was neutral in content and also met all the other statutory requirements. This doesn't mean that city staff or volunteers or members of the board can't participate in the political process. They absolutely can, but they need to do it outside of work hours or outside of their role, for instance, on planning commission during their own time. So an example would be if someone were to say to a planning commissioner, are you willing to endorse a ballot title or a candidate? That person can say yes. And they could say, can we use your title as a planning commission member? And the answer to that question is yes. But somebody couldn't come to the planning commission during a planning commission meeting and say, will you, the planning commission, endorse me as a candidate or endorse this measure? Because during that time, the planning commissioners aren't acting in their individual capacities. They're acting as a member of the planning commission. So for city staff, the best rule is if you want to engage in political activity, you do it not during work hours, but when the city hall is closed. And if you do that, you'll be fine. There's been some interesting case law about work emails, and my advice is absolutely don't use for city staff, don't use your work emails. If you send out an email from your work email, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've committed an elections law violation, but then the burden is on you to prove that you didn't do it during your day, your working day. So there was an instance where a state employee sent out a email during her lunch break. She had to prove that it was sent during her lunch break, and she had to prove that that's the day that she took lunch every day. And as you can imagine, going through that sort of elections law inquiry is not fun for any public employees. So I would say do not use your work email address at all, and make sure that you're sending it at a time when City Hall is closed. For the ballot title that we might have coming up in May for the firehouse, it's kind of almost in some respects a bit absurd rules for our volunteer firefighters, because they are volunteers. They could advocate and they could use their title, but if they were acting as a volunteer firefighter at the time, they couldn't. So if they were putting out a house fire, they couldn't turn to the property owner and say, hey, by the way, would you please vote for a new fire station, or will you please vote against the new fire station? Because during that time, they would be acting in their official capacity, performing their duties as a volunteer firefighter.
Can I ask a question? Just to clarify on that. So let's say if one way to think about that would be if they're in their uniform or their turnout's not a good time.
Yeah, if they're wearing the sort of sweatshirt I will buy at the fireman's ball, or the sort of hat or something, or a t-shirt, that's fine. But if they're in their equipment that they would use to fight a fire, that's not when they should be engaging in any elections advocacy. And again, really what you want is to avoid an investigation, because it's tremendously stressful to be facing a fine or other repercussions and have that burden of proof on you in order to prove that you are acting outside of your official capacity. Elected leaders, of course, are able to advocate without reservation, including during meetings. But once it's on the ballot, what you can't do is to direct staff to prepare advocacy materials. So the rule is, if someone's putting together the minutes for a council meeting where a counselor made comments, that's fine. But if you were to say, hey, Chad, will you write a op-ed on why this should pass or why this should fail, you're not going to be able to direct staff to do that once the ballot title has been turned into the county. And so that's an important distinction. The Secretary of State's office provides what's referred to as neutrality review. So that allows us to take anything that would come from the city, to turn it over to the Secretary of State's office to have them do the neutrality review without penalty. So in the event that a line was crossed in their advocacy, because we're going through that process with the Secretary of State's office, it's not a problem as long as we correct it. If they were to tell us that something didn't meet neutrality review and that we didn't correct it and send it out, then we would be facing a violation. If they said that something could pass neutrality, that did pass neutrality review, and we were safe to send it out, and someone later complained and we were found that it wasn't neutral, we're able to use that process as a safe harbor to prevent any fines or other things, because we're acting on the advice of the Secretary of State's office, and they're given that ability to perform the neutrality review. They used to also be willing to perform those on ballot titles and the explanatory statements. They no longer offer that service. But if our materials track with what will be in a ballot, and our ballot title has already been reviewed, and so is our explanatory statement by a judge. So I feel very comfortable with those. But to the extent that there are phrases we might be concerned about, the Secretary of State's office is willing to do that. Sometimes it's a little counterintuitive. There's a state program called Safe Routes to Schools that offers a state grant for sidewalks and pedestrian safety projects, that gas tax can be used to provide that match. And that's the use for a gas tax. The Secretary of State's office said, well, that's not neutral. And I said, well, state program that the legislature put into place. So if it's capitalized, why would that be a problem? And they ultimately just felt that that was a little too attractive, that phrase, state safe routes to schools. That was under Secretary Richardson. I don't know whether this Secretary of State staff would reconsider that. It's something that previously had been allowed. So that's why it's important to double check. There was one point in my career where I felt very strongly that I could predict with a very high degree of certainty what would pass muster and what wouldn't. And I was consistently kind of right about those things. But then when you get new staff in, they might look at it differently, and what seemed neutral to someone else might seem like advocacy to them. So that's why each cycle, if we're going to put out any statements from the city, it makes sense to make sure that those are neutral. And again, that rule goes into effect once the county has our ballot title. Right now, there aren't those rules in effect, and they won't be until that ballot title is turned in.
I have another question then.
Sure.
We have like the FAQs that have already been out there. They're on the city website. Will those need a review at some point in time, or are they good to go?
We'll want to have those reviewed just to make sure, just to make sure, because they are on the city's website and active. If they're flyers or something of that nature that have been distributed to people but haven't been distributed to the general public yet, we would have no way of getting those back. So it's kind of whatever's in the air is in the air. And the one exception to that rule is if we were to receive a public records request for something that had previously been on the website, we would be able to fulfill that public records request even if that document involves advocacy, because we're not putting that out using city resources. We're putting that out in response to a public records request from the public. So that's the one caveat. If we have true volunteers that receive no remuneration, so like no points, none of that. An example would be our CERT team, who doesn't, workers' compensation isn't considered compensation for the purposes of this. But so volunteer personnel at a public agency are able to engage. And again, with those volunteers, they can use their title if they want, CERT team member. During a meeting, if it's a CERT team meeting where we have city staff in there, it's probably a good idea that they not advocate, but they would probably fall within that purely volunteer. Because our volunteer firefighters receive some remuneration, for instance, when they go to California or what have you, showing up for training, showing up for meetings, they don't fit within that purely volunteer personnel. So they need to be, just extra vigilant about that. The government contractors, they have some special rules as well. I'm not aware of any government contractors that we have other than, I guess, me. I guess I'm an independent contractor, but I'm also a city officer. So I tend to believe I fall into the more rigorous standard than the less rigorous standard. And then the other person that has some special rules that apply to him is Chad, because he is our city elections official. And we've spent quite a bit of time over the years about what he can or can't do. So he's very familiar with those rules.
Peter, what's the turnaround time for the neutrality review?
It's usually within 48 hours. It's sometimes within 24. They turn it on really quickly because their goal is compliance. I mean, they understand we're trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to make sure that we have the information we need to do the right thing. So if there's some instances where it's taken longer. particularly if it's a like opinion piece for cities that may have a city newsletter, because that's something that they don't see as often as just like a fact sheet. So it's not a guarantee that it would turn around in 48 hours, but the vast majority of cases they do.
Great.
So we can talk a little personal expression by public employees as far as t-shirts or buttons or things of that nature. Those sort of passive displays are allowed, except for our city elections official, who should probably not do those. However, verbal communication is not covered. So if you're wearing a button that says vote for whomever, you can do that even though you're a public employee. But if you were to say something like, see my button, I'm voting for whomever, they would be on the wrong side of the line. So if people have First Amendment rights and people have the right to participate in the political process, what I would encourage though is that these are complex rules that a lot of times members of the public might not understand, or they might not be tracking it as closely. And so they might think something isn't allowed even if it is. So my recommendation is probably to not wear the buttons or t-shirts, but you can. I mean, you're allowed to, but I've had jurisdictions where we've gotten letters and it said, so-and-so was wearing a t-shirt that said pass the library bond. And I didn't think that was appropriate. And it is appropriate, but I can see how a member of the public might not understand that or be confused. And so that's why I recommend not doing that, though they certainly can. As far as public presentations and speeches or use of City Hall or anything like that, the rule is basically as long as both sides are invited and both sides have equal time, you can use a city asset. So if we were to say, that there's going to be a forum on this issue, so-and-so is representing the no side, this person's representing the yes side, and it's going to be a debate where each person gets 10 minutes for an opening statement. They get asked 5 questions that have been provided to them in advance, and then they provide a closing statement. That's the sort of thing that could occur on city property because it's content neutral in that both sides have an equal opportunity to present their case. The same thing would be true for a candidate forum. If you were to invite all the candidates to basically explain why they should be elected, that's fine. If you were to say we're only going to invite the preferred 3, that's not. And so that's the sort of thing where we just need to be careful that we're providing equal opportunity to folks. And that, again, one of the goals for the city is that the city seems completely transparent and that the city staff are playing fair and by the rules. I know that, sometimes it can be frustrating because I'm saying we've got to play by the rules. And yet I got a phone call this afternoon that said, where people were saying, I've heard that the volunteers don't want that site as the fire station site. And, I said, well, I'm not aware that that's the case, but I'm sure there's someone that can reach out to the volunteer firefighters and ask them, are you in favor of the proposed High Point, site? So that's the sort of thing that can easily occur right now because these neutrality rules are not in effect. If the city were to put out a flyer after the ballot title had been turned in that said 100% of firefighters said they want a new fire station at the High Point site, that would look a lot like advocacy, even if that is just factually correct. Because what people would draw from that is, and I should vote for that because, you know, I want to support. So once the rules are in effect, that's the sort of thing where we have to be really careful. If the volunteers are all on the record right now and something has been distributed out, then you know, that's a different story. But that's the sort of, again, that was something that happened today. That I got a phone call and from somebody saying, hey, I have a question about this fire station. And I said, okay. And they said, I heard the volunteers are against the site. And I said, if that is the case, I'm not aware of. I would be surprised if that was the case. And if that is the case, I'm not aware of it. And you might want to reach out to the volunteer firefighters and get that determination and ask them what they want to happen. The legal challenges in by against us or by us or what have you, we just went through that process in August. So I think everyone kind of knows what that looked like. We put out our ballot title, it was challenged. The judge wanted a hearing. We had a hearing. And ultimately that was upheld. Everything we did was upheld, but we missed the deadline. And part of the reason that we went through that hearing is that I wanted to get a determination on the ballot title so that if there was an issue, which I didn't think there was, I went to incredible pains to draft that as neutrally as possible. But to the extent that I missed, because I'm a human being too, that we could get that determination and hopefully avoid a second one of these. Everything that we had done was affirmed by the judge. So I feel very comfortable that if we use the exact same ballot title coming up in this upcoming election, hopefully we could avoid the expense of a hearing. In the event that was appealed, hopefully the judge would just rule on the merits, since this exact same ballot title has already been in front of them once, but that's outside of our control. And so hopefully we don't have to come go through that process again. As far as government logos, that's another thing where we have to be really careful, because a government logo on something appears like it might be a government endorsement. So if people use our seal and then say vote yes, or they use our seal and say vote no, we want to avoid that happening, and we certainly don't want to be the ones that are putting that out. And again, with stuff like city hosted Facebook posts, we just want to be careful that anything that's on there after the neutrality review goes up, that nothing is advocacy. So I think that I'm pretty comfortable for getting through that. I think that we won't have that problem going forward, but I want to just alert everyone, be super vigilant regarding the use of the city seal. If you are speaking as a counselor, just say, you know, as a counselor for the city of Gerhart, this is something I feel very strongly about in one way or the other. And this is why I am supporting or opposing this question or candidacy or what the election issue is going forward. Because again, these same rules apply to anything going forward, with one exception. This is a referral where we're referring it. If it's an initiative or a referendum, the neutrality review goes into effect as soon as the prospective petition is filed with the appropriate elections filing officer. So if they were to file an initiative petition with Chad and me, because I need to prepare the ballot title, at that point, it would go into effect, even though they haven't, the neutrality rules, even though they haven't yet gathered the signatures. And that is the one difference between a initiative and a referral, is that because we know that we know exactly, if you're referring something, it happens immediately. And so that's why when it goes to the county, whereas if it's an initiative or a referendum, because it takes a bunch of time to get signatures, the state doesn't want cities engaging in elections advocacy around those issues during that signature gathering time, which I think makes good sense. As far as advertising, I don't know that we would do that. The example the state gives is a school district produces game programs for football games, and a candidate has to have a half-page ad placed in the program, and a public employee charges the candidate the same fee as any other person or group. That would have been charged for the space, and puts the pre-designed ad into the program. That's acceptable. The key there is they have to be paying, and the same thing will be true for an issue. They have to be paying the same rate as everyone else. They have to format the ad themselves and come up with the ad. We couldn't have city staff like writing the ad or writing the copy for the ad or drawing pictures for the ad or any of those things. It needs to come from the person, and the rates need to be consistent. And then if we have people that want to visit during the city council meeting that are advocating, they can do that. I mean, this is something that can be covered during the public comment period. We just want to be very clear that anyone, regardless of the viewpoint, can participate during the public comment about this. So where we would get into trouble is if we said, we'll allow public comment for people that are supporting or opposing issue X. We're not going to allow public comment for people that are neutral or hold the opposite view. So again, if it's a public meeting, that would be fine. As far as sharing information with the media, which happens sometimes, if it is part of a person's job to do that, to share that sort of information with the media, then they're able to do that during working hours, and they would not be in violation of ORS 260.432. If they were to be called and asked for an endorsement during working hours, that would be a violation because they're on the job during working hours and they're endorsing. So again, these are rules that sometimes are counterintuitive, but that's why we review them every election cycle, because like 6 years ago, people couldn't use their title unless they were elected. So if you were a planning commission member, you couldn't say planning commission member under your name, and now you can. So and that was because the Secretary of State's office decided you could. So they get to make the rules, and we just have to make sure we're following them appropriately. And that is all I have got, actually. I told Chad it would be 30 minutes and close.
Great.
So Peter, I have a question.
Sure.
Regarding the social media pages, for instance, our fire department has a really nice Facebook page. So are you saying that as city councilors, we can't make comments on it, whether we're for or against the new fire station?
No, you absolutely can. What they can't have is say, city staff is using our city Facebook page to say everyone needs to vote for the fire station. You can put that on as long as it's you, because you're an elected official. Chad can't put that on, and neither could staff. Chad in particular, because he is,
Sure.
yeah, but any city staff, if they're engaging in elections advocacy, they're using the city's Facebook page during work hours.
Right.
That's not a good idea. If they want to do it after hours, they need to really clarify that they're making these comments as a private citizen, in their capacity as a private citizen. And that's for the employees.
And also, if people write us emails to our city councilor email addresses, although that is not a city logo, it does have our city email return address. Are we allowed to have an opinion when people email us to
Yeah.
our city council? We can?
None of these rules apply to you. The only
Okay.
one you have to worry about is not directing city staff to engage in advocacy. 'Cause
Okay.
That's really the only way you can get in trouble.
All right, thank you.
So just to clarify, if I want to send out an email and find out if I can get some help, with some particular project related to this, like button making or sign posting,
Yeah.
I can use the city
You can
email
use your
for that.
email address. You can use your mayor email address. Again, it's just not soliciting city employees during working hours is the key there. But you can use your own email account. You can email as much as you want. You can engage in advocacy while at City Hall during meetings, really almost without limitation.
So if I was invited to speak, say, to a homeowners association meeting, would it be acceptable to bring a staff member such as Chief Como for any technical questions?
Yeah, as long as he's showing up in his individual capacity and makes clear to them that he's coming up, he's appearing tonight as a resident of Gearhart, not as the Gearhart Fire Chief. That though, obviously he'd be providing like some technical information that probably would not be known by just a regular person. But again, like if he's off of his customary working hours, and as long as he's clear that he's speaking in his individual capacity, there's no prohibition on him engaging in the conduct.
And also, so if I went by myself and was asked a technical question I couldn't answer, I can say, I'll get back to you, go
Yeah,
get the
absolutely.
technical information and then go back to the people.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
And Peter, I wanted to absolutely clarify that when you refer to elected officials, appointed officials are covered under that term, or is there a special bucket?
Right. So if you're an appointed official and you're acting in your official capacity as an appointed official, so like a planning commissioner during a planning commission meeting, those prohibitions will be in place. If after the meeting, somebody walked up to you and gavelled out and said, "Hey, would you be willing to endorse that?" Because you're no longer serving in your official capacity, you could say yes, and you could use your title. And that's a change. That's a change that has occurred in probably 6 years ago. But yes, they can. They can do that.
But Brent is treated as an elected, even though he was appointed to the
Right,
council.
yes, you are a elected official for the purposes of this, even though you were appointed to the city council.
Okay. Just wanted to know if I needed to be extra cautious.
So can we talk about the various Facebook? So we've got the Gearhart Nice Neighbors. So that one isn't connected to the city at all, and that can be used.
Right.
Other than I am one of the administrators of that site.
But that's okay.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
And then, Brent, help me out, the one that the firefighters have, the one that the discussion group.
Yeah, the discussion group is one that I started with one of the volunteer firefighters. And so that's a specific fire station discussion group. So now there are 3 administrators. One of them is our fire chief and one is a volunteer fireman and myself.
So as long as people are posting to that, not during working hours, they'd be fine.
Okay, great.
Okay. Do we have any other social media presence that we should be talking about?
We have the main Facebook, the fire department Facebook page, and my thought was to keep kind of all political posts off of it and steer them towards a discussion group one. I don't know if that's correct or not.
Yeah, I think that is a good policy. You could just have, if you have questions about the fire station, here are links to information.
Okay. We are hoping to keep the main fire department Facebook page like for public notice stuff like we have been doing, or weather related, or.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I think to the extent we can avoid having anything elections related, that'd be great.
Great. One other question, and this might be for Chad, but Cannon Beach has had some election kerfluffles with regard to their drop box. And I want to be prepared for that because, you just don't know how those ballots got stuck wherever they got stuck. But are we prepared on that?
We will be and have been following that issue. So yes.
Where will people be able to put their ballots? Will it be in Gerhart or at the county, or mail them?
It would be all of the above because this is a regular even year, assuming it goes on in May, primary election. So it would, people could mail it, they could drop it off with any county box.
Okay, okay.
Peter, I have a quick question.
Sure.
What if somebody wanted to purchase information from our water billing system in order to contact residents and that sort of thing, such as addresses?
They could do that. It would be the same as any other public records request.
Okay. Thank you.
And that would include the PAC.
Yeah, anyone can. We have to treat everyone equally when it comes to public records requests. So we don't inquire as to why they want it unless it's one of those where we're weighing the public disclosure versus private interests. And this wouldn't be that sort of instance.
So we can share personal addresses and phone numbers. Just
In response, if someone were to do a public records request for the utility billing addresses, I think that would be something that could be provided. I can't think of an exemption for that. People get mailing lists all the time. In fact, our former Secretary of State did a public records request for everyone that had emailed the state government and then used that for his campaign, and there was not an issue with that. It was legal, though some people frowned upon it.
And it's okay to charge a fee for releasing that information?
As long as this is the fee that is charged for everyone. So like if we have a 10 cents a page for copy, as long as we're not inquiring as to why somebody wants the information and we're charging everyone the same rate, then yes.
So do we have an established fee schedule for releasing that?
We do.
Right.
Any other questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have one for Peter, one more, just to clarify. If an elected official is going into a meeting, such as the HOA, and wanted to bring the chief so that the chief could answer questions factually, that's something to be avoided, correct? If it's on.
Yeah, but you can't force the chief to go. So if you were to say to the chief, there's this meeting, I don't know if you'd be interested in attending. If you are going to attend, you probably need to clarify that you're doing it. Not probably. You should absolutely clarify that you're doing this in your individual capacity, and you probably shouldn't wear your uniform. Then, and if you were like, hey, you're gonna go to this meeting and answer questions, like that we don't want to do. With public employees, you can't compel them to engage in activity. If they want to engage in the activity on their own time, they can. So that's the one thing we need to be careful of.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that I had right now. And we also have this recorded as well.
Right, great.
And so this can be referred back. Anybody would like a link to it, we'll be able to provide you with that.
Okay.
There are a few more questions that I'm going to have for Peter throughout, so that if there are other questions that come up, put them in writing for me if you can, and then we'll work things out and then get back to you as quickly as possible. So I don't have any more other questions. Anybody else at this point?
Not at this point, no.
Nope.
Great. All right. Well, I will talk to everybody later.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Peter.
All right. Bye, guys.
take care.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Goodbye.